Welcome back to the Sewing for Baby video series. Together we are sewing and stitching the perfect baby layette. Today we're going to be doing some hand stitching, and I have a great free design for you. We are going to be embellishing some onesies. So first up, let me introduce myself. I am Lisa from Pink Holly Bush Designs, where we add love with every stitch as we talk everything sewing and smocking. So as I mentioned, this is part of an ongoing series on stitching the perfect baby layette. Today we're going to be embellishing a onesie with this adorable little whale. The pattern will be linked below where you can go and grab it. It's a free download, and grab your copy of the pattern and come join me. We will stitch this applique on and then do a little hand stitching as well. Now, just to give you a little bit of an introduction, we're using a knit fabric for the applique, and the wonderful thing about that is there's no need to turn under those edges because it is the edges don't ravel on it. So makes it very simple, very easy, and it's just a great and quick, fun little, spend a few minutes and you have a terrific baby gift. Put a few of these together or do it as part of something else, and the new mom who receives them will just be thrilled. And of course, a onesie is just such a practical, necessary item as far as baby's wardrobe goes. So let's get started. Today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable little whale onesie, but stick around to the end and I will have some ideas for you on some other designs you can put on a onesie. So to transfer my design, I've simply taken the pattern, printed it out, cut it down so I just have the design part. And I hope you can see, I've just slipped it in there and I've pinned it in place. And I'm just going to trace it using a blue marking pen. Now, I don't have a light box. You can hold it up to the window if, like me, you don't have a light box. Or in this case, I actually can see the design through the onesie, so I'm just going to trace it off. Now, for materials, I have this navy knit that I'm going to use for the little whale. I have a little scrap of white that I'm going to use for the eye. I have floss to match the navy, white to match the eye, and then I have a yellow for the sun and a teal for the water. Of course, you can use whatever colors that you would like. For needles, I'm going to do all the stitching with a number 8 embroidery needle, except for the eye, which is a bullion knot, and I'm going to use a number 3 Milner's for the eye. I have a little scrap of felt so I can smooth out the floss. I'm going to wet my felt and just run it along the single strand of floss. Once I've transferred the design, I simply cut the little whale out of the pattern, put that on my fabric, and used it to cut out the applique. You also can cut the eye out and do the same thing to get your circle for the eye. So I have my little whale all pinned in place, and of course the wonderful thing about the knit is that the edges don't ravel, so you don't have to worry about trying to turn under any of your edges. I'm using these little applique pins. If you have them, they're helpful just because they're so small. I'll put a link below to them so you can get some if you want them. I have my 2 strands of matching floss in my number 8 embroidery needle. I've smoothed it just using a damp piece of felt, and you just run the floss through there like that. I've knotted it, so I'm going to start by coming up actually start in the middle of the whale. I think that'll be easier, and I'm coming up just in the edge of the blue fabric, and I'm going to tuck that knot under. And I'm doing that just so that knot isn't against the baby's skin in the back. Okay, I'm going to turn this around so I can stitch and get my hand up in there. So I'm going to do a blanket stitch. And I'm going to go straight up and come straight back down just to get started. Whoops, I caught my knot. There we go. We'll tuck that knot underneath there. Okay. I'm going to go over about, I would say, 1/16 of an inch, and my stitches are about 1/8 of an inch. And when I come up, I'm going through the back and catching the onesie. I'm going down into the blue fabric, through the back of the onesie, and coming up in that blue fabric. I'm just catching the edge. Okay, so let me do that again for you. And even with my small little applique pins, they're still in the way. I'll just move that over a little bit. All right, make sure you can see this. I'm going over about 1/16 of an inch, going down in the blue fabric, going through the back of the onesie, coming up in the blue fabric, and going over, didn't say that last time, the top of the thread. So the blanket stitch is riding right along the edge. Okay, again, 1/8 of a stitch over, coming up through that edge of the blue, going over the top of the thread and catching it in place. And I'm just going to do this all around this little whale. Now if you run out of thread, as I'm about to, I'm not going to make it. We're just going to go to the back through the onesie. I'm going to take a couple of stitches right in place. And cut it off. To start up again, you can do a little knot and slip it underneath the whale, or you can do 2 little stitches. And I'm going to come up right where I went down, right? I'm just in the last stitch, right in the edge of the little whale. And then I'm going to just continue on. And there's my little whale body. To attach the eye, I have a single strand of floss. I'm using my embroidery needle, and I'm just going to go around doing tiny whip stitches. Just like that. Okay, to make the bullion eye, I've got 2 strands of floss in my number 3 Milners. I've taken a couple little stitches on the back to anchor it. I'm coming up kind of from the bottom, halfway up the side of the eye, and maybe about 1/3 to 1/4 of the way in from the side. I'm going to go straight across, go down that same distance, and come out in the same hole. Turn my little onesie here. And I'm going to wrap the needle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 12 wraps. Don't do them too tight. You got to be able to get the needle through the wraps. And I'm using my thumb to hold it all in place, and I'm pulling the thread through. Then I'm going to bring the thread around. Okay. And pull it. Now, I want to just kind of, I want a curve. So I've just pulled it down with my thumb. Now at this point, I'm going to anchor that again. I'm going to go down to the back. Now I want to do a couching stitch to keep this kind of nice little curve in place so it doesn't flop around. So, got to get my hand there. I'm pulling it down into the curve, and I want to come, I'm just going to go up and over the top of the stitch. So I'm coming up there, I hope you can see, kind of in the middle of the curve. I'm going to just go over the top of the stitch and right back down. Okay, and so that keeps my eye in that nice little curved shape. And then I'm going to do my 2 little stitches in the back, and my little whale is all done. Now this is the second time I've done this little whale design on a onesie, and the first time I did it, I think I only used 1 strand of the floss to do the blanket stitch to anchor it. This time I've done the 2 strands. If you would like the blanket stitch to be less noticeable, use the 1 strand. Either one obviously works. I actually think now that I've done it, I liked the 1 strand better. Right, the rest of this design is all done with stem stitch and 2 strands of floss in that embroidery needle. Now I'm not going to use a knot anymore because all of this is just on the onesie directly. So I'm going to just start with those 2 little stitches in the back so we don't have any knots against the baby's skin, and I'll go back in and just trim my tails off after I'm done with the stitching. So there's my 2 little stitches. A bit hard with this small little onesie here. Let's get back in place. So I did my 2 little stitches, and then I'm going to come up so that my just to the left of the 2 little stitches, I'm going to be stitching from left to right, doing the stem stitch. So I'm coming up, so my first stitch is going to cover those. Okay, so now I'm going to take first stitch. And we keep the thread below the needle for all of this, and I'm going over about 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to go all along like this for the water. And then I'll do the same thing for the seagulls and the sun. So a hint on doing the sun is to avoid having to tie off on each of the spokes. If you stitch around the circle, then go out to the end of one of the spokes or the rays, you can then go to take your needle to the back of the onesie and run your needle and thread back along the ray and then along the circle over to the next ray. And that way you can work your way all the way around without having to tie off each time. So here's my finished little whale onesie. You can still see I can still have some of that blue marker showing. So this is now going to go into a tub of cold water to soak overnight. Make sure that that blue marker is all gone. You don't want to use any soap that will set the marker, and so that's why I am soaking it overnight to really make sure that that blue gets out before I give this away and a new mom is throwing it in the washing machine with a lot of soap and setting the markers. So we don't want that to happen. I hope you give this little whale onesie a try. But I promised you that I had some other options for you if you didn't want to do a whale, or just if you want some additional ideas on how to quickly embellish some onesies. So first up, if you've enjoyed this video, I would appreciate you hitting that like button and subscribing. It does help me grow my channel, so thank you. So additional design ideas for you. Well, first up, I'm going to pop up a link to another video, and this is the ducky blanket that I did. Now, the mama duck in that design would probably be too big unless you're doing a larger onesie, but included with that design are a couple baby ducks. And the baby duck would be perfect to put on a onesie with the water underneath it. So click on over to that video and grab that free pattern and give that a try. Another option is the A to Z of bullions. If you enjoy doing a bullion stitch, they have a ton of different designs, and this particular onesie that I did with these little ducks came out of that A to Z of bullions, and they have a ton of different animals in there, including a lot of the Australian animals, because the book was originally designed and came out of Australia. So for example, there's a koala bear. I think that would be adorable on a onesie, and there's lots of other options as well. So you might want to grab that and give one of those a try. If you give this method a try, I would love to see what you made. You can connect with me over on Instagram and just post a picture, tag me at Pink Hollybush, and show me what you're stitching. Have a great day and happy stitching.